very much. Good evening. Do you remember this from our last series? Valery Lavrinenko, the Ukrainian superhuman who pushed 2 wires through his arms and then pulled a 40-ton train. Well, he's back with us tonight. Also, at last, evidence that the power of your mind can actually influence the national lottery. And the Belgian woman who claimed that her body would not decompose when she died. You'll be astounded when you see what happened when her followers dug her up. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those psychics that does something like this. They say, I'm getting a message from a John, a Jane, a Jimmy, a Jeff. They say lots of names until eventually they get one right. Then they say very non-specific things like, I see a uniform, or why would I be seeing a foreign country, or the color blue? Something that basically can apply to just about anyone. That's a technique called cold reading, and it allows a psychic to appear to be more intuitive than they really are. George Anderson is not like that. He's quite specific in his information. He's an internationally recognized psychic based in Long Island, near New York, and people travel thousands of miles to consult him. We sent a recently bereaved family to him to put him to the test. Long Island-based psychic George Anderson now has such a reputation for calling up spirits that bereaved families have to book several months in advance and pay up to £1,000 for one of his 45-minute sessions.
Sometimes you can actually see the person's loved one appear, but it's not all the time. I would say the majority of the ability works from where you feel you are seeing, you feel you are hearing.
George says that he discovered his psychic ability when an attack of encephalitis nearly left him paralyzed.
Maybe it destroyed a certain part of my brain, maybe it reorganized the electromagnetic responses to the brain, maybe I'm using more of my brain than the average person. Anyone's guess would be as good as anyone else's.
When Anthony Nadler, or Felix as he was usually known, died along with his secretary in a jet ski accident, his mother Desiree and his sisters Tony and Kim never discovered exactly what happened.
My son was on his jet ski with a few of his friends, and his secretary was with him on his jet ski. They went out. It had to be 4:30 in the afternoon was the last time that they were seen, supposedly to come back within 15-20 minutes, and they never came back. Sometimes I do think there's foul play because they couldn't find, him for so long. I wondered why. Maybe he was somewhere else. Maybe I'll get my answers.
But would George's psychic powers really enable him to make contact with Anthony? The Nadler family volunteered to meet him, and we checked that there was absolutely no way George could have known anything about the dead son.
Okay, before we begin, would you please vouch and testify, live on camera, that up until this very moment in your entire lives, you've never spoken to me in any way, shape, or form ever?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, then we're all set to begin with that out of the way, and of course, whatever I say to you, just say yes or no. And let's see.
During his session, George moves his hand in a rapid circular motion, which he says distracts his conscious mind and opens his unconscious mind to the spirit world.
Well, definitely a male presence around you, and I'm sure a male close to you passed on someplace, so I don't even think I have to wait for you to respond. He is giving me the feeling of the son that passed on, is that correct?
Yes.
Yours?
Yes.
Your son's passing is recent, yes?
Yes.
I see a bolt of lightning over your head, which obviously means it happened very recently and very suddenly. Is there an Antoinette passed on?
No.
Your son keeps calling Antoinette. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, as long as you understand.
Kim, who gave birth 6 months after Anthony's death, named her daughter Antoinette in memory of him. Quite incredibly, George then came out with Anthony's name. He was right first time and mentioned no other names at this point.
Let me just tell you what I'm seeing. I'm seeing St. Anthony appear. Does that mean anything?
Yes.
Okay. There's an Anthony passed on, yes?
Yes.
Your son? Mm-hmm. All right, obviously what he's trying to tell me is that he's called by another name, correct?
Yes.
But he is baptized officially Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He mentioned his name, his birth name, which was Anthony. And he kept saying how he was called something else. He didn't hit on the nickname, but we called him Felix. But his name was Anthony. That surprised me that he got that right.
Toward the end, at the time of his passing, did he seem a bit distant?
Yeah.
Because he seems, that's why I'm looking at you. It seems to be directed more at you. He just wants you to know that you didn't do anything wrong. He certainly loves you and knows how much you love him.
We've had an argument and we didn't speak for about a year. And so we missed out on holidays and a lot together. So that's the guilt I've been carrying. And when she told me I should let it go, so.
George then described with quite startling accuracy how Anthony passed away.
He says, I am in a situation where I'm trapped or caught. And he says, I can't get out of it except to fall asleep and let go. It's like somebody drowning. They're struggling in water and they realize, well, I can't help this. There's nothing I can do about it. And they just resign.
That was the cause of death, was hypothermia, and of course we know you fall asleep, and so he was right.
Your son also thanks for the memorial. That makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah, because he keeps emphasizing thanks for the memorial, which must have been a recent thing. Others are benefiting from this memorial?
Yes.
Is it anything health connected?
Mm-hmm.
Because I keep seeing a lot of white uniforms going around you.
The memorial fund was set up for St. Mary's Hospital in Bayside, Queens. It's for terminally ill children, so they can have an art and music therapy department. That it was cut from the budget, so we're trying to get it back for the for the children. And he was specific about that. That was impressive.
Inexplicably, George then hit upon the question that Desiree wanted answered more than any other.
Were you concerned that your son's passing was indeed an accident?
Yes.
Because he keeps telling me it was an accident. That should take a burden off your mind.
Yes.
Because as soon as he said it, I felt like an anvil came off your head.
I did think that there might have been foul play. And I guess my son was, I think he was, pillar of strength on that. There was no foul play, and he wanted me to get that message. So, I'll go with it.
He embraces the three of you with love, and to his dad and friends and family also, it's like tell him you've heard from me, that he is all right and at peace until we meet again. And with that, he signs off, and there they go. Okay, away he went.
George came up with a number of precise facts about the Nadler family that he could not possibly have known before. So did Desiree, Tony, and Kim believe that they'd been talking with Anthony?
Was I convinced it was my brother? Yes. Yes, I do. I believe it was you.
Yeah.
I as well believe he was there. There was a presence there. It made me feel better. I don't know how long it'll last, but for now it made me feel better.
Last series, one of the most controversial people we featured was the Ukrainian superhuman Valery Lavrinenko. He fired 80,000 agonizing bolts from a stun gun into the base of his brain. He stayed underwater for nearly 7 minutes without breathing. He speeded up and slowed down his heart at will. And he's back tonight. Please welcome, with his interpreter Felicity, Mr. Valery Lavrinenko. Hi, great to see you again. Thank you for coming back. Now, there were some skeptics last time, even though you did some remarkable things. What are you going to do to really silence the skeptics tonight?
Today we have a more up-to-date piece of equipment, and what I'm intending to do is to work on my heart rate and show it to you on this piece of equipment.
So could you ask Mr. Lavrinenko to get on the couch then, please?
Пожалуйста, проходите сюда, Валерий Андреевич.
We have paramedics standing by just in case anything goes wrong. This is consultant cardiologist Dr. Richard Cowell. We have 3 ways to observe Lavrinenko's heart during this experiment. Electrodes connected to an ECG machine will monitor the electrical activity in his heart, and our super-sensitive microphone will listen to the changes in his heartbeat. But most spectacular is the ultrasound machine, which allows us to see inside Lavrinenko's heart as he controls it with the power of his mind, and we'll discover once and for all if it's real. Could this be dangerous?
It could be dangerous. I think I'd be quite concerned if his heart rate dropped below 35. I gather he's going to increase his heart rate first, and then he's going to reduce his heart rate to quite low levels.
Okay. Is he sure he wants to go ahead with this?
Обязан.
I am.
Okay.
Начинаем. 84, 85.
And now, somehow or other, Lavrinenko's going to speed up his heart.
88.
So you can see it's going at 88 now. You can see his heart
94.
contracting quickly.
These coloured flashes are the blood coursing through his heart.
106. Just like you or I
110.
running down the street. Very dramatic rise.
122.
122 now. 130.
132.
Still going up. 132.
134.
This is dramatic. I can see his heart
136.
beating very, very quickly on the echo.
137.
Many people can't get their heart this fast if they run.
140.
He's 140.
139.
Very, very quickly.
136.
Now bring his heart down
115.
very quickly. He's brought it
111.
down to 111 already. Coming down very
Stop.
swiftly. Consistently now.
92.
92. And it's coming down dramatically to 80.
80.
58.
58.
Lavrinenko's heart rate is dropping very fast now.
47.
47.
45. 36.
It's very, very slow now. 35. 35.
Okay, I think that's enough. Have
Yes.
you ever seen anything like this before, Doctor?
No, I think this is really dramatic. I've never seen anybody being able to lie down like this and increase their heart rate so precipitously and then bring it down to these very low levels. Levels, in fact, where we might consider calling the crash team in hospital.
Is there any way this could be a trick, Doctor?
There's absolutely no way that this could be a trick. We've got 3 different devices looking at his heart, and it's impossible for this to be tricked in any way.
So that's the answer to the skeptics who didn't believe it last time. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Valery Lavrinenko. In just a moment, the Belgian woman who claimed that her body would not decompose when she died. Now for one of the strangest stories we've ever encountered on the programme. It began nearly 50 years ago in a tiny village called Onkazela in Belgium, where a lady made a prediction that she'd live on after death. And when she died, the power of her mind would protect her body in the grave. The villagers believed her, but then came the day when they had to find out if her prediction was true. 40 years ago, Madame Leonie van den Dijk announced that though her friends and neighbours would soon be attending her funeral, she would never leave them. Her body would never decompose in the grave. A simple devout woman whose husband had abandoned her and their 13 children, she knew because she'd had visions of the Virgin Mary in which she said the future was revealed to her. No one doubted the good woman, for the villagers here say she performed many paranormal acts. Some believe they were miracles, and she inspired much devotion. It was 23 years after they'd laid her to rest that the villagers decided to exhume Leonie to see whether her pronouncement had come true. So in the churchyard at Onkezele in Belgium, they stacked up the many plaques thanking her for cures which continued to come even after her death, and opened her zinc coffin. This amateur film was taken by a member of the congregation. What would they find in the waterlogged tomb? It was a nerve-wracking moment for the firmest believers. After so many years, even some of them now had doubts. Leonie had not been embalmed. A doctor examined her and reported that the body was still perfectly intact, normal and pliable. As she had foretold, she still remained among them. Local medical experts can't explain it, but the villagers believe it's a miracle, and now they worship at her grave. Do you remember how we finished our last series? We invited everyone watching to take part in a mass PK experiment. That's psychokinesis, the ability of the mind to influence matter. And we were going to influence the national lottery. Camelot, of course, refused to cooperate, but they couldn't stop us. And this is what we did. 36. 7. And that lucky bonus number, 2. So keep imagining those numbers coming up, and when the lottery machine starts up on Saturday, what you've got to do is concentrate hard on your television screen and literally will the numbers to come up in the order that we've selected them tonight. If a number's wrong, don't worry, just concentrate hard on the next one, and let's see how many we can get. If millions of people do it all together, we could be in for a very big surprise. And this is what happened on the night. So we got 3 correct numbers out of the 7 drawn. Was that just a lucky coincidence? Well, interestingly, a week later, Camelot changed the rules so that if lots of people get 3 numbers correct, they won't automatically get £10 anymore. When we asked Camelot if it was because of our experiment, they said definitely not. So was that just another coincidence? Well, if mind power of, say, millions of people can influence gambling, there's only one place to go for an answer. This is the gambling capital of the world, and the one person who knows more about lotteries and psychokinesis is Dr. Dean Radin of the University of Nevada, here in Las Vegas. If we really did affect the lottery, what do you speculate took place?
Well, we know from many years of experiments that if you have one person looking at a random system and you give them the instructions to affect that random system, that they can, to a small degree. And I guess in general, it's possible that the mass focus of many people could have actually caused those numbers to come up.
Dean Radin's opinion is based on years of academic research here in these laboratories.
Imagine that we have somebody flipping coins, and your task then is flip the coin and get a tails. Okay, and they do that. Now flip it again, get another tails. Fine. Now do it and get heads, and so on. Devices like this were developed, which is an electronic version of a coin flipper. It's producing sequences of zeros and ones, which is the equivalent of head and tails.
So Dean got computers going in Las Vegas and at other labs in America and Europe. Each computer was generating 70 random numbers a second.
You have an electronic random number generator running continuously, and you have it running during a time when there's some important event, like the O.J. Simpson verdict when that was announced, or during the Academy Awards, or any other large-scale event where millions of people, or perhaps billions of people, are watching the event. And then we simply look in time as what was happening in the random generator as compared to what was happening on the television broadcast.
Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of penal.
What effect did the O.J. Simpson verdict on television have on your random generators?
We found 2 interesting events. We first found that at 9 o'clock, which is when the broadcasts were first televised, that we found an unexpected degree of order created in all 5 of the random generators. And this corresponded probably to a lot of people tuning into the program and then very rapidly realizing that nothing was happening, because actually it was a shot of outside the courthouse at that time. So the random generators then settled down, and we saw chance behavior for almost an hour. There's a small bleep about 15 minutes before the verdict is read. Then just before 10 o'clock, we saw a sudden rise in the amount of order, probably corresponding to everyone now tuning in at 10 o'clock. And then a few minutes later, when the verdict actually was announced, we saw another very high peak of order created in all the generators, and then a very rapid drop-off immediately afterwards. What we're seeing is that the coherence of mind produced by millions of people all tuning in to watch the show exactly at 9 o'clock and then later at 10 o'clock, we saw that corresponding order in the random generators to an extremely unexpected degree statistically, and more importantly, we saw those unexpected events precisely at 9 o'clock and precisely at 10 o'clock. So the odds of that actually occurring, these 2 unexpected events at 2 precise times, is probably millions to 1.
Dean Radin's theory is that when millions of people concentrate simultaneously on the same thing, like the O.J. Simpson verdict on television, there's suddenly less confusion in the world, which was why his computers stopped producing haphazard numbers and mysteriously got themselves organized. It's worked before. In 1993, thousands of people came together to meditate in Washington, D.C. The crime rate dropped in the city by 20%.
We're talking about a unified theory of mind and matter, which is reminiscent of a unified theory of matter and energy. And if that theory is true, then we would expect that large changes in mind would correspond to large changes in matter. That's what we see.
So does this mean that if enough gamblers all tried to influence the roll of a dice, they could do it? Probably yes, but Dr. Radin sees something far more momentous.
The main direction of the implication is that the Earth seems to be an organism that is alive. I mean, we know that it's trivial from an ecological point of view, but here we're talking about an organism the size of the world that has something like a mind. One of the implications of the mass mind effect is that as the world gets closer and closer, that these mass mind effects will happen more and more frequently, because more and more people will pay attention to the same thing, usually through televised broadcasts. As to where it ultimately ends up is anyone's guess, but taking a positive aspect, perhaps the world will become more ordered in every respect, which sounds nice.
Join me again next week for another journey into the incredible world of the paranormal. Good night.